Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. Just want to kind of get this video out there now. It's going to be obviously a weekly scan for the upcoming week, which should be very, very small. I mean, it's very simple. I've been focusing on like 2 to 3 names at a time. As you guys know, we've been really trading QQQs, building into NVDA contracts, and that's really been it. I've been looking at ETHA or BMNR. I haven't really found, quite the contract I want to take or the look that I want. But it is shaping up, I will say that. But yeah, I just want to record over real quickly on this QQQ trade. I mentioned right as it happened, right there, this was clearly a capitulation candle to shake out longs. Usually in September, October, we see some kind of pullback that is front ran for the end of the year. I keep saying it over and over again. And this was a very interesting candle because we kept slowly grinding up. Virtually no pullback that got over like 2% or even a percent and a half, anything like that. So I didn't see the pullback I wanted just yet. And then we finally had this candle here. This was the largest liquidation in, I think, like crypto history. Obviously, it matched on equities as well. Not quite as extensive, but yeah, this is a crazy candle. VIX obviously spiked as well, so a lot of people fled the market and took positions off, right? Obviously, the tariff fears were a big thing, and like I said, PTSD from April. A lot of people switched to cash. You can literally see that through VIX. The thing is, though, I wanted to see, and we've seen this a lot with these capitulation candles. If it was truly like the beginning of the distribution and it was going to start marking down, right? It doesn't do it in one fell swoop. It will climb back up. But if it was to open near the lows or close to the lows and then had high volume for a continuation on a lower low, then I would change my mind and be like, okay, this is going to sell off a little bit deeper. That's why I wanted to wait till that Monday. If you guys take a look back at like Q1, during a lot of the distribution that occurred here that we caught. I mean, you guys can take a look. This was a large volume bar, a large candle, obviously, as well. What did it do? It opened near the lows and then continued lower, right? It was a very small bounce or small open to the upside, right? So just kind of a small gap to the upside, and then it came down lower. Same thing with this candle here, large candle. Volume wasn't super high, but still a large spread on the candle. Open at the lows, continued lower, right? Same thing for like here, large candle to the downside, right? Big candle that basically took out a week of price action, opened at the lows, continued lower. So I wanted to see if we were going to open at the lows, and that would kind of show the intent behind the move. And you guys can see, right, literally opened up halfway through the candle. And a lot of people likely chased the gap up and were looking to go long on that move up. What does it do? It pulls back, right? And that was important to see how we respect the lows. I mentioned that time and time again. We pulled back down, large wick to the downside, so showing buyers are trying to hold that Friday low. And we always talk about it too. It's so important to be looking at a lot of these like progression gaps, right? And there was a very simple progression gap from like back here that I was mentioning. It was kind of the midpoint. It's where we gapped up above, and I just wanted to see us hold into this zone, right? So we came down, we pulled down to the lows. Volume was nothing close. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not to the extent that we saw from that Friday capitulation. VIX after this day completely vomited, right? If you guys go take a look at VIX after that big spike, VIX pulled back, so it kind of showed that like weak hands, if you want to call them, or uninformed traders got out of the market. They were scared. Then the next day, right, VIX came back down, kind of showing that that move was not real, right? I firmly believe institutions accumulated off of that fear. I kept bringing it up. We saw dark pool prints to the upside right around 610, so I was targeting 610 up here, like right around there, 611-ish. And you guys can see, right, we slowly started to get ground cleared, and we held this 598 595 spot, right? So that was the progression gap that I was talking about right here, and we started to make lows against this spot. So we had our initial position that we were holding, right? This was a great trade, and then you guys can see we ended up if we even go to the hourly, I was mentioning this on hourly too, they were basically trying to trap breakout traders and then pull it back down, right? So we had the morning of, after the Friday capitulation, we gap down, huge hammer candle, right? We rip up, we push back up into this little supply zone, if you will. We pull down, we get another higher low, right? Then we rip up above all this spot here. Everybody's now looking to go long off of this, right? What do? We sell off again. Everybody gets scared. They accumulate off of the lows or that progression gap once again. Then we gap up. We look like we're going to break the lower high. This is where I mentioned the sweep candle. I told everyone we can go short off of this one. We went short, right? And then it broke all the way down to the bottom of 595, 595.97, give or take. Swept under just a little bit, but overall, right, you guys can just see the volume. It was not anything close to what we saw from Friday. The intent was not to sell, so the relationship between volume price wasn't matching, right? There was a high volume bar here, then there was no effort, aka no result, right? So the two don't equate to a move lower, and I kept mentioning that over and over, and we were holding higher lows against 595. Then ultimately we ended up getting the gap up into 610. And I was mentioning like, hey, we could get a sell-off all the way back down into this gap fill here, right? And that's kind of what I was looking at. I didn't, I put it in chat and I was like, hey, like if you guys want to go short on this one, you guys absolutely can. I was kind of looking for the long off of this spot. And that's literally what we got. We got to push down underneath this level. We reclaimed, right? And then I think I went long on the reclaim of 604-ish. And then we got a straight melt up all the way back up to the gap fill right around 610. And that was the last alert I had on Qs. I ended up closing this one out as well. And then we got the big gap up through 610. And obviously now you guys know, excuse me, I'm getting a little sick here, but I still think that this could be an hourly distribution, right? So the gap fill from CPI was like right around here. This is kind of looking like a picture perfect 1 hour distribution. So it doesn't have to be super bearish. And the fact that this comes all the way back down, it takes out the swing low down here. I literally think that it's going to trap breakout traders off of the up thrust here. So buy climax was the left side, up thrust was here where we were testing willing buyers. I don't think there was enough. We ended up pulling back down into the gap, a little bit of an undercut, obviously. We pulled back up. CPI ends up pushing this all the way up, sorry. And then I think this is the UTAD here, right? And you guys can kind of just see the volume price relationship here as well, right? The volume is completely dried out. So we had the gap up, which was here, so there's expected to be high volume, but the move up was virtually all on low volume. And you guys can see the spread of the candles was getting tinier and tinier and tinier. And then ultimately into the close, we saw high volume and this started to trickle down just a little bit. So, a lot of people, once again, are breakout traders. It's an all-time high. I could see this beginning of next week now selling off and creating an NVDA to the downside, right? So new weekly opening gap where anyone that went long on the breakout and then was just holding, especially going into FOMC, we have not Jerome Powell. We do have Powell talking next week, by the way, but Trump and Z is probably the highlight. I could see this gapping down again, coming to 610, consolidating here, basing out for Monday, Tuesday, and then looking for a launch backed up into the gap fill if we are to get an NWOG, and then potentially even higher up into like the 620s, probably through those two catalysts I mentioned, but also tech earnings is this week as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. It doesn't have to be a major distribution. I'm just seeing it on the hourly. That's why I said just kind of light size. If anything, it's just kind of like a nice hedge to have against NVDA because we are heavier in NVIDIA. We have QCOM. And yeah, that's really it. So that's the breakdown of that trade. It's kind of what I'm looking at beginning of the week is just, if we can break underneath, I would say, if we can even just like move this up just a tiny bit, I'd say this is good under 613. So if it, comes down to 613, I could see this getting a lower high, pushing up, testing the open, right? So the open from this gap up here on CPI, then breaking down under 613, retesting 613, and then getting a move down to 610. So this is what I could see. This would be the only applicable thing I could do to add into those QQQ puts. And I could just draw this out too. Maybe it even just kind of breaks down underneath the 616 opening gap here, and it retests it there. I could add here, then look for the breakdown under 613. I can add the retest there. So I have two tranches I can add into the QQQ puts just to kind of mitigate things and make it a bigger position to be able to net on that. But that's what I think, right? I think this is just an hourly distribution, comes down to 610, and then we mark up from there. I've been saying this 2-week window, you want to be buying into the end of October, into that weakness, and then beginning of November, you want to be full long. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's just a small recap on Qs. I think I took like 2 different trades on that one. 2 longs, and then I took 1 short actually. So 3 trades actually, and then kind of where I'm at now with the short side of it. I don't think I'll trade Qs if it comes down to 610, right? If I see it here and it starts to hold, if anything, I think those are just adds into NVIDIA. And we'll take a quick pivot into NVIDIA really quickly because that, that 610 spot will line up really nicely with a breakout retest that we saw on NVIDIA at the close on Friday. All right, now tying this into NVDA, right? NVDA had a nice little breakout here through this gap fill. We've been talking about two targets here, which was 188 and then 195. We've been saying, right, like a lot of rotation is potentially happening after that VIX spike, right? A lot of people fled the leaders in the market. And then what we started to see is a lot of growth names and a lot of speculative names really see weakness. And a lot of those names off of that weakness saw 25%, 30%, 40% pullbacks. And a lot of the names in tech, right, the things that really led the market forward, we're starting to see a bid or a bottoming event. So I really think that a lot of the money that was in those speculative names is just going to go right back into the names that have got this name cues in the market overall up into the highs, right? It's just going to be right back into what worked. So that was a big NVIDIA thesis, and a lot of people kind of view this as the king of the market. Obviously, with its market cap, it makes sense. They want to see this fall, so this is usually the one I kind of look towards. So if Q's is to pull back to 610, right, this is a clear breakout through. It's on decent volume. It's on higher volume. Not as high as some of the candles down here. But you guys can see, right, some of the most bullish stuff comes off failed breakdowns, and really the 680 spot, or I'm sorry, 180 spot was the line in the sand that I was watching. Obviously I was basing risk off of this gap fill here at like 178. That's why I kept saying, hey, I'm staying in this, I want to see how like 178 reacts. And we kept breaking underneath this candle here, right? So the Friday capitulation was like here, right? We obviously came a little bit lower, but we started to make a floor off of 180. This is a really big gamma level. There's a lot of dark pull buys here, and we kept breaking under, but every time we broke under, it would wick back above and kind of close underneath that 180 to like 179.70 low, right? Just in this general range. We kept closing above. Every single time there was an like high effort, it was a low result. The result was not a break and close under 180. So that's why I was like, okay, this is looking like it could be a failed breakdown, or just trying to wick out buyers here. And really, you guys can see for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days, we just consolidated against 180. This was the biggest attempt that I saw right here on Wednesday, which was VIX expiration. So that was the one day I was worried, and it did come lower than this Wednesday low from the 15th. But once again, major wick under, pushed back up and closed above 180. So I think this was the last attempt, or the high effort attempt, to break it under 180. It didn't result in anything, right? We closed back above 180, so the result should be a move higher and kind of like a back off from sellers. If that was even the intent, I don't think the intent was to sell. I think it was just to buy and try to sweep out buyers here. And you guys can see we got a nice little launch off of 180. We ended up breaking above 184.80. That was a huge call wall, guys. Massive, massive call wall. I think it was like 37 million, 45 million or something like that were built into the 185s, like in a total amount through, I think, like 1024 and then 1121. So the fact that we broke through that was pretty bullish. If we could pull back now with QQQ pulling down to 610, and this can hold 185, super clean, where I think that we just basically retest the breakout through the gap here. We push up into 188. That would be first target. I'd probably take some profits on the 195s for November 21st, because that's so close to earnings. Probably take those off, and then this could get like a divergent pullback here and kind of consolidate, because we do have earnings in a little bit. It takes until the 19th. I do have to sneeze. 1 second. Let me see if I can hold it in. I'm good. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Maybe a consolidation, but some kind of divergent flag. I guarantee there's going to be sellers here, so just got to have to watch it off of this spot. But ideally, just some consolidation here, and then I think earnings is what sends it all the way back up to this spot here, right? This is obviously the next gap that we're targeting, so 193.50. I think we get an overshoot over that to like 195, maybe a new all-time high. But yeah, that's kind of the pathway that I'm looking at for this one. So if we can pull back and hold 184.80, I'll probably roll and add some more into those December 19th contracts that I rolled into. I'm up about 30% on those, or I was like 25 or 20 or something like that at the close. I think at the peak I was at 30. But yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking at. And I've been saying and pounding the table, I want to add NVIDIA. So I do have two positions on this one, 1121. And then obviously those are the 195s. And then I have, I think it's the 190 or the 195, might be one of the two, for December 19th. Those are a little bit more expensive, but the pullback here, I'm okay adding into the winner. But yeah, that's really the main two that I'm watching, guys. I mean, I'm using QQQ as my barometer or my gauge to try to time the bottom on NVIDIA. The NVIDIA retest of that call wall and that gap fill that we just kind of broke through the test of it, or the start of it, at 184.80 Look for the pullback onto that on divergence. If it can hold here and Qs simultaneously hit 610 and everything kind of bottoms, I think that's an add for a move up into 188. Like I said, divergence, I'll add into the December contracts, pretty much trim my November and let those kind of ride into earnings. And then, yeah, hopefully we can get a big launch up into 193. And if we take a look at the weekly, guys, I mean, this is really bullish in my opinion. Obviously the volume's not super high on the weekly, but the fact that we have these two large lower wicks to the downside kind of looks like tweezer bottoms here on the weekly, right? Just that long extended wick from the downside that we're trying to get people out from underneath this like 178 spot, 180 spot, and it didn't break down on high volume, right? Is really bullish. It just looks like a failed breakdown and trying to bait sellers into to short under 180, and looks like it got the move. And it mitigated it really well. I assume this just goes higher. So that's basically the main one is NVDA. I do want to talk on like BMNR and ETHA really quickly as well. All right, and then the last part of this is probably Ethereum. Guys, I keep talking about Ethereum and how well this chart is holding up. If we just take a look at just Ethereum on Coinbase here, I'm just kind of looking at this old high, just retesting, right? We had this major high here, right around like 3,900 to 3,800. It pushed up as a lower high. We tried again back here in December, and then obviously we had a big breakout on high volume here as it kind of snapped through 4,000, and then now it's pulling back on, as you guys can see, the past 3 weeks have been on low volume, albeit that shakeout or that liquidation that occurred across the broad market, specifically in crypto. This happened on Friday, right? So the week of October 6th. Long lower wick that got soaked up. Candle spread for the second week in a row decreased, right? This candle spread is a lot smaller than this one. Still extended lower wick that's defending this little demand zone. And then this most recent week, same exact thing, right? All candles closing above, spread of them's decreasing, and then importantly, right, we can take a look at the volume decreasing as well. So I really like the spot this is in. I think this could put in a nasty monthly candle. I know we only have a couple days left before the monthly closes, so FOMC tech earnings I think could propel this a little bit higher and give it a solid monthly close. But yeah, just kind of watching this demand zone. I was going to trade this via BMNR. BMNR's chart is absolutely ridiculous. I think if I were to take this, it would be on, with shares. IV is simply too high, guys. I feel like it's pricing out a lot of individuals, and the longer that it chops, those contracts are going to be losing value. I don't know exactly when this is going to happen, but you definitely don't want to be involved with something with high IV, because if it does spike, right, IV is going to naturally increase, and then any pullbacks IV will decrease as well as the delta and the gamma that are working against you if it does see some kind of pullback. So this one is a little bit difficult via options. I still like shares on this one, but I think the way I want to trade this, guys, if I'm being completely honest, is through ETHA, right? This is the ETF for Ethereum. Pretty basic progression gap system. We don't have enough data, right? Ethereum's been trading a lot longer than the ETF itself, so we can't really push this against those old highs, right? If I go back to like the weekly, it's not as crystal clear. Obviously there was like the IPO price from back here, there was this high from back here, but it doesn't match up the same way that Ethereum matches up, right? It's not the same exact thing. So I really just like the kind of the pullback that we've seen down into this 29 spot. 29 was the top of this progression gap from back here, August 7th. And then the lower end of that was 27.91. And you guys can see we saw a nice bounce off of the top of it. It pushed up, almost made a new high, and then it sold down and then broke to the bottom of it. Same thing, saw a bounce off of that, push back up, higher low potential. Now off 29, right in this general range. So I am kind of watching this to see if it could rip off, I would say, Friday's high. Sorry, on my throat, I keep having to swallow. Kind of just rip off of the spot if we see a continuation through Friday's high, or we open around 29 again and just hold in this general range, or maybe even a sell-off. Honestly, if this pulls down to 27.91 and it actually fills, we see a large print come through, so like a high volume, any kind of high volume bar, it doesn't have to be a hammer, but just something off of that, I would be interested in taking this. So that's really the main other chart that I'm watching is Ethereum via ETHA, right? ETHA. I like BMNR for shares only, but definitely want to potentially get some Ethereum exposure. Now, you guys might remember I was kind of bearish on IBIT I bet I thought was like a macro distribution, right? I've talked a lot about the weekly, how it formulated here with the biclimax, the upthrust, and then it started the UTAD here, and then broke off into like an individual daily distribution with the biclimax here, the upthrust here, the UTAD here. And really, I was looking for it to break down to the bottom of the range at 61.75 and then bounce off of that one. If it hit this as support and then make a lower high as the LPSY. But really, what it did is it broke under, and then I was waiting for a retest from up below, right? So I was waiting for something like this. This would be a retest of your MSAL, or the micro sign or minor sign of weakness was down here. I would wait for a retest of this as the LPSY, and then it pushed down to fill the gap at 58. But it got so weird and so it just got clouded, right? We ended up gapping above that level, so now there's an opportunity for 61.75 to act as support. It then breached into this gap fill here, as you guys can see. I mean, I clearly have this marked like 63.90. It did show potential for this to be like an LPSY where it faked into the gap and then could break down, and then it did, right? But then it just caught a higher low, right? You guys can literally see there's a low here, a higher low here, and then it reclaimed back above 61.75. So now my mind's a little bit jumbled. Like, are we going to see a divergence between, where Bitcoin sells theoretically and then Ethereum catches a major bid? Or am I just entirely wrong and this isn't a distribution? Or maybe it was just like a quick distribution off of this UTAD that wants to be reaccumulated really quickly. I'm not entirely sure. It's not really respecting the LPSY. Could this be the LPSY, right, where this like maybe just rips up into like 65.81 or maybe this 66 spot and then it continues down? Absolutely. It's something I'm wary of, which is why I've been a little bit hesitant. You guys have seen me. I've been posting about Ethereum in the chat, like, hey, this could be, I made a video last week about it where I said, hey, this could be a divergence play between Bitcoin and Ethereum, where Ethereum rips and Bitcoin sells or is relatively weak. The reason I haven't alerted that or taken it is because I'm just unsure about this range here. But with some further digging, I just like the general range that Ethereum's in, right? Just going back to the chart itself. This looks good, right? It just looks like a retest of the highs. If we take a look at, like a Wyckoff perspective of this, I can pull that up really quickly. Sorry guys, it took me a second to find that, so I just figured I'd edit it out. But yeah, this is like literally what I have. That's what I've been looking at, and maybe it's mistaken as a distribution because they can look similar, but the volume patterns are matching what could be a reaccumulation after I guess the accumulation that occurred back here. I have price action kind of covering it here, right? It's not picture perfect in this way, but obviously big move up, right? A lot of the volume spikes down here could have just been a very quick or sporadic accumulation that occurred. And obviously the distribution on Bitcoin obviously saw a rotation. So it could have been a very quick rotation, hence why I think we could be getting a reaccumulation, right? They didn't get enough inventory on that first move. But literally everything kind of aligns, right? I mean, we literally have the PSY, which I think was this pop here in the pullback. We have the buy climax, automatic reaction. We have the upthrust action here. Secondary test as a sign of weakness. Then you rip up to the top here, literally aligns perfectly with that. You had the shakeout or the spring action that occurred underneath this low, then it recovers, and then you get the test that reclaims the previous range's low, right? Just be familiar with like MU or LRCX if you guys remember this. Had the test, then it ripped up, you guys, and then it pulls back. You get the LPS just shy of the previous buy climax, and then you get another rip, right? And then what do you get the SOS or the back up move, if you will, and then it pulls back in bases here. It can also be the creek jump, however you guys want to view that. And then from here, right, you usually get a major change in sentiment where people are talking about being a failed breakout. You get like narratives of it being a distribution. Oh, this thing sucks. It's not doing anything. These typically hit the hardest when this ends up happening, right? Or it's too extended, and then you end up getting a massive rally off of that spot there. So I think this is a reaccumulation. I think this looks good. It looks healthy. The volume here, as you guys can see, is once again divergent. Candle spreads are minimizing. As we just retest these old highs here, what really convinced me was the shakeout bar here, right, from back on April 7th. I mean, the entire market did it, but I really think that we could see a crazy cycle here with the whole market, but specifically Ethereum. So that's really kind of the basis of the idea, basis of the trade here. And if we can just kind of reflect back, anytime we had a stock kind of do this exact same move, right? If we just take a look at these shakeout candles after the part of the reaccumulation that occurs, you get the shakeout, you get a rip up, you get the LPS, which is the same exact thing that we're getting on Ethereum, right? We just go right here. This was the LPS for this name. Once again, MU, and I always tell you guys to have a photographic memory because you will see the same stuff over and over again. That's literally right here, right? And then it rips up, it bases the top. Obviously, this had a little bit of a pullback, so maybe Ethereum does that. Maybe it goes a little bit lower and shakes people out underneath that high, but that's why it's important to monitor it on the higher time frames, because all it ended up being was a pullback into the gaps, right, or the top of this gap here at 103. It ripped up, it pulled back again, got another higher low over the top of the creek, right, and then it ended up going on a parabolic rally, right, literally parabolic. And LRCX, same exact thing, guys. LPS ripped up, pulled back. It didn't have like the two consecutive higher lows that MU ended up having, but same exact story, right? Where it pulled back down, large buyer came in off of this earnings gap. I guess it wasn't a gap down, but an earnings sell-off, if you will, that pulled it down to retest 89.50 or the creek. This is your BU SOS, and then it ripped, right? Massive, massive move. Tell me that doesn't look exactly like this, right? Pretty fucking similar. Maybe not the same consolidation where we saw it trade for God knows how long MU did it. It felt like 8 months. This is obviously a lot quicker, but same exact fashion, where we had the spring shakeout, test, LPS, pull back over the top. And yeah, I mean, if we take a look at Bitcoin and stuff like that, as you saw with MU, could there be a potential move underneath that gets people to lose conviction because it's technically losing support? Absolutely, right? If you take a look at ETHA, right? That would be a pullback where that could shake out a lot of people's confidence, where it ends up pulling down to like maybe 25.89, maybe 25.70, maybe a little bit lower down into 24, 23, and then what it ends up doing is a big recovery back above, right? And then it pulls back down and holds, and then it starts to go. That could absolutely happen. I don't know where that would put us on Ethereum's chart. You guys know you can't really see gaps on this, but this could do something like that MU did, where it just shakes out everybody underneath this buy side liquidity. Maybe it takes out the LPS initially, and then it's scares a lot of people out, and then it just recovers with a higher low, breaks out, higher low, and then it's on its way. So it's something I'm still watching, but I have an idea of what I want to do with BMNR being a share trade on this, and then monitoring ETHA, ETHA. I was looking at ETHU, which is obviously a little bit more levered. It's a 2x lever of Ethereum. I think I'm going to avoid that. Volatility on that will be pretty extreme, especially if we are to see a shakeout. I feel like we will get shaken out, or I will personally get shaken out. So just monitoring these two, I think there's a huge opportunity on this. And I want to keep emphasizing this because it is going to be in the back pocket. Once NVDA hits 188, 195, we want to have something else we can tap into. So that's kind of the idea here. And I'm absolutely in love with this chart. But that's really it, guys. That's all I got for you guys. Appreciate everyone's time as always. I'll be more active on the chat. I know I got some shit talker to me today and on Twitter, and personally I've been doing really good, just kind of like doing my own thing. Obviously I'm alerting my trades and I'm putting everything out there. Everyone's doing pretty good. I've had a lot of messages kind of saying I'm doing well and they're doing well. Obviously that's the goal. But I said I was going to do this. I warned you guys. Back in April, I lost like almost half of what I made in April, guys, which was demoralizing because I called that perfectly. Meta, AMD short, a couple shorts on SPY. Obviously, I had those leaps, those like the three big losses that I had, and it ate away at like half my profits. And I told you guys I was going to be locking in to try to make that back, try to get into the end of the year. I mentioned if we didn't see a sell-off going into like August, September, or not August, September, it was like May/August, that market was bullish. Like there was no way that we're going to be going down. And I've been emphasizing that for a while now. I've been doing incredibly well, and a lot of people have been doing well. I just don't want a lot of people's thoughts in my brain because I hear talks of bubbles. I hear talks about like short squeezes. People are telling me to get into Beyond Meat. People are telling me ASST. Everyone was trying to get me in Oklo. People were trying to get me in Quantum, short Quantum. Like you guys, it can get so, I don't know, it can get so jumbled in your brain. And then there was a point too, I did peek at chat, and there was like 30 names brought up at one point. And then I was looking at charts. I was looking at AI. I was looking at Oklo. I had like a watch list at one point that was like 30 names. you're not going to be successful doing that. So that is why I did that. That is why I took like a little break from chat. I wasn't on Twitter that much because I just want to lock in and put my trades out there, live with the results, and not have noise. Find quality charts that I like, quality charts that I do well with. And yeah, but you know, I'm probably going to be partnering here with somebody soon. I did mention that in the chat that will be able to help me out with things. I'll introduce you to him really quick, or in a short amount of time. I'm just kind of working out some of the kinks with that, but we'll be able to help me out. I'm still kind of helping him with certain aspects of his trading and refining it. But yes, that will be helpful to have somebody kind of do content with me, education. He's very much a fundamental trader, so that will be nice to kind of bring to long-term portfolios. And I'll have a lot of people ask me about that. But yeah, just to kind of split the work in half, and then obviously engagement's going to be a big part of it, and you know, obviously engaging with you guys. But yeah, so that's pretty much it, and I'm very, very excited. I kind of have like a lot of my stuff good now. I'm up, I told you guys, I'm up almost 130K since that April half drawdown, so I'm doing very well. I feel like I haven't really missed much. I think the only thing I may miss on is Qs here. You know, we'll see what Monday ends up bringing us, but that's only 2 contracts, so it's not that crazy. But very confident in NVDA and pretty confident in the QCOM. We'll have to see with earnings on that one, but yeah, just wanted to touch on everything. I will be more active in chat, and especially as I bring the new guy on, should be a lot better as well, and I should be able to delve out the work, kind of make sure chat and everybody's doing well while, you know, either he handles trades or handles the back end stuff, or we can kind of just share work. But all right, guys, that's going to be it. I appreciate everyone's time, man. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys in chat tomorrow on Sunday, end of night, and then we'll kind of see where Monday brings us. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's pray for an NWOG gap down. If we can get this shit knocked out here, this move down in the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, that would be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And yeah, then I think tech earnings and FOMC should be pretty nice thing. And if we don't sell down, right, Monday, Tuesday, I'm kind of worried that FOMC or you know, Trump or and Z, and I think Powell's talking as well, one of those might be the catalyst for the downside. Either way, I think this is just a dip buy. I wouldn't stress too much about trying to catch the short. But yeah, that's going to be all, guys. Appreciate you guys. See you guys tomorrow.